Obviously, this is the revised version that has the same length and correct grammar. It's a collaboration, which is, in my opinion, too strong a word. Yeah, this is the one you wrote the book on, wasn't it? Sure, no problem. For quite some time, yes, Berserker. From everyone, Keanu Reeves kept his worst problems hidden. He has to make a difficult choice regarding John Wick 5 now that his body is giving out from decades of stunting. However, behind the scenes, there is a more tragic tale unfold. Tragically, his best friend River Phoenix passed away, he also lost his infant daughter, and his soulmate was killed in an accident. Here we will reveal the reason behind the silent pain that Hollywood's friendliest star has been experiencing throughout. Beirut, Lebanon is the site of Keanu Reeves' birth on September 2, 1964. His parents were Samuel Reeves, a scientist from Hawaii and China, and Patricia Taylor, an English costume artist. His mother was performing on stage in Beirut when he and his father first crossed paths. Keanu in Hawaiian means what? Cool breeze over the mountains. A life lived by Keanu has never been static. His ancestors were nomads. When he was 2 years old, his parents divorced. Because his father abandoned the family, his mother raised him and his sister Kim all by herself. I struggled. Through it all, he witnessed his father's struggles. He was apprehended at a Hawaii airport for selling heroin after getting involved with drugs. Keanu hadn't seen him since he was 13 years old. They didn't cross paths again after that. After that, his father ceased to be involved with him. In order to provide for their family, his mom worked extremely hard. Because of her career in show business, Keanu's life was filled with creativity, but it was also full of constant change. She tied the knot multiple times. Every marriage brought a fresh start in a different city. After that, they stopped in New York and continued on to Toronto. Each time they relocated, Keanu had to adapt to new environments, people, and ways of life. Life never settled down in Toronto, no matter how much it felt like home. His mother's second husband was a film and stage director, but they were only married for a year. She wed a rock producer for her second marriage. That too was short-lived. A hairdresser became her husband afterward. As Keanu observed his mother's efforts to secure her life, nothing remained constant for very long. Another issue was going to class. He attended 4 different high schools in the span of 5 years. Because of his dyslexia, he struggled with reading. Regular school was too much for him, and he was expelled. However, his focus shifted to other matters. His escape mechanism was hockey. Keanu Reeves' hometown of Toronto was a place where hockey was more than just a game, it was everything. Even at an early age, he exhibited exceptional talent on the ice. He considered trying out for the Windsor Spitfires of the Ontario Hockey League because he was that good. In terms of one's career prospects, that would have been a major milestone. Unfortunately, the plans fell through. He had to forge a new path after suffering a devastating injury and abandoning his aspirations. Although losing hockey hurt, it prompted him to take action, which he hadn't anticipated. The experiences of his youth had prepared him to adapt to new circumstances. Once his parents divorced, the whole family was constantly on the move. Keanu had to constantly adjust to new schools and locations due to his mother's profession as a costume designer, which meant she had jobs all over the place. The constant upheaval may have given him the resilience he'd need to succeed in Hollywood. In order to devote himself fully to acting, he left high school at the age of 17. The hardest thing he ever did for himself was to give up hockey. Despite his inability to play hockey, he gained valuable life lessons in self-control, teamwork, and perseverance. Through it all, he acted. Additionally, his love for the game was unwavering. From time to time, he still plays for fun. With a small role in the 1984 Canadian TV series Hanging In, he finally broke through as an actor. Comedy on CBC was a decent beginning, even though it wasn't a huge deal. He also landed one of his first major acting jobs in a Coca-Cola commercial around the same time. It wasn't thrilling, but he felt accomplished afterward. He was a reporter for Going Great, a youth show on CBC that same year. In his role, he was required to interact with the public, particularly youth, through storytelling and conversation. He improved thanks to the unconventional show. Even performing on stage had a profound effect on him. In 1985, he performed as Mercutio in a North York production of Romeo and Juliet at the Lee Pusen Theatre. He learned a lot about acting from classical theater, despite how difficult it was for him. His career was booming as a result of his work in television commercials and live performances. During this time, he considered changing his name. He was worried that parts would be harder to come by because of Keanu Reeves' voice. Ultimately, he decided to keep going, even though he nearly gave up at cost. His decision demonstrated a crucial point. He would not compromise his identity in order to blend in. His career turned serious when he landed a role in the 1986 Toronto International Film Festival opening night crime thriller Rivers Edge. In this narrative, a gang of young people dealt with the aftermath of a murder. Reeves played the role of Matt. He had a troubled friendship with the killer. He was fantastic in the role despite not being the main attraction. Because of its complexity and nuance, he was able to manage important matters. 2 years later, in Permanent Record, he landed his first major role. Some of the weighty themes explored in the film were adolescent suicide and loss. In the role, Reeves portrayed Chris Townend, a young man struggling to cope with the unexpected death of his best friend. The role allowed him to express himself freely and honestly, and he played it with conviction. The impact of his performance was significant. He wasn't your average young actor playing angsty teenagers, critics noticed. The pivotal moment in his career occurred in 1989 with the release of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Because of it, he gained fame. Bill S. Preston Esquire Alex Winter and Ted Theodore Logan. Keanu Reeves were two high school students in the science fiction comedy who were required to meet historical figures in order to pass their history class. Reeves and Winter had an instant connection after he tried out for the part of Ted. The fact that they were both into bass guitars and motorcycles helped them bond and gave the impression that the figures were real. Everyone was surprised by how well received the film was. The critically acclaimed film, which cost a mere $10 million to produce, went on to earn $40 million worldwide. Ted shot to fame after Reeves' casual portrayal of the role and the success of his catchphrases such as "whoa" and "excellent" helped propel him to stardom. He rose to fame. Due to the show's immense popularity, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey was released in 1991 as a sequel. The series was adapted into the 1990 122 animated series Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. Unfortunately, his success came with a cost. Many began to view him solely through the lens of Ted the Loser Kid. Not everyone thought he was mature enough for the lead role. That perception of Reeves lingered for a long time, but he refused to be defined by others. He had barely begun. The next sections were more substantial. July 12, 1991 was the release date of Point Break. Even though this film showcased a different side of Reeves, his most famous role was still as Ted and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. In order to apprehend a gang of bank robbers, FBI agent Johnny Utah goes undercover. She did him a solid. Bodie, played by the charismatic Patrick Swayze, was leading a group of surfers, not your typical gang of criminals. Johnny was supposed to murder them, but he started to care about their way of life instead. Due to the dramatic elements, it was more than just an action film. Heart was in it. The action sequences had audiences on the verge of their seats, and Reeves and Swayze had fantastic chemistry. Reeves proved she could hold her own as an action movie star in Point Break, which grossed over $83 million globally. During the subsequent 3 years, Speed significantly elevated his position at work. Released on June 10, 1994, the film followed the story of Jack Traven, a police officer tasked with preventing a bus bomb from detonating. Anything less than 50 miles per hour would cause the bus to explode. The concept was simple yet powerful. Jack became a true hero thanks to Reeves' ability to give him an air of calm determination. Sandra Bullock, who played a bus passenger, was entertaining to observe as he interacted with her. The film became one of the year's biggest hits with over $350 million. Now, Reeves was a famous action star with a big salary. Everyone was expecting a sequel to Speed after its massive success, but Reeves surprised them all. He declined Speed 2, Cruise Control, despite the fact that it would have been easy money. He preferred to explore unconventional paths and embrace uncertainty. That decision demonstrated that his goals extended beyond mere fame to include improving his acting skills. Because he was just as risk-taking as the characters in My Own Private Idaho 1991, directed by Gus Van Sant. The action sequences that would later propel him to stardom were drastically absent from the film. It followed two young con artists, River Phoenix and Reeves, as they traveled the nation in search of purpose. Reeves plays the role of Scott Favor, a wealthy young man who rejects his carefree lifestyle. Some of the topics covered in the film included love, character development, and coming into one's own. Reeves was well received by critics for his authenticity and complexity. He could play dramatic roles as well as action ones, but some bets were unsuccessful. By the mid-1990s, Reeves's business was in a state of disarray. The 1995 release of Johnny Mnemonic was anticipated to be a smashing success. This was based on a story by William Gibson and took place in a cyberpunk world that seemed futuristic. However, the film was poorly received by audiences and failed to meet expectations, earning a meager $17 million worldwide. Chain Reaction, released in 1996, was another terrible film that bombed at the box office. After watching these films, people started to question if Reeves could handle roles that weren't action hits. Production on The Matrix began in 1999. This film did more than just restore Reeves' star. It revolutionized the film industry as we know it. In their film The Matrix, the Wachowskis envisioned a dystopian future where machines controlled and augmented reality. Reeves played the role of Neo. A hacker named Neo became mankind's savior after discovering the truth. The film's groundbreaking use of special effects, such as the bullet time sequences, has since become iconic. The photos weren't the only thing, though. Truth, fate, and free will were prevalent themes in my thoughts as I read the story. Reeves poured his heart and soul into his role in The Matrix. To master his own techniques, he spent months studying wushu and kung fu. He put in a lot of effort, so the task seemed more substantial. With global box office receipts of over $463 million, the film was an enormous success. A household name, Neo quickly rose to the ranks of Hollywood's A-listers. Two sequels were released in 2003 due to the immense popularity of The Matrix: World in Four Dimensions, Reloaded, and The Matrix Revolutions. Reeves was no longer merely an action star or still part of the updated version, which has better language but retains the same length and content. Everyone looked up to him as a hero. Outside of Hollywood, the film made an impression. Concepts and images from it made appearances in the worlds of style, music, and even philosophy. Playing Neo catapulted Reeves to fame and made him a legendary actor. In 2021, with The Matrix Resurrections, Reeves made a long-awaited return to the series. By that point, his reputation extended far beyond that of an actor. He was well respected for his humility, kindness, and commitment to his work. Keanu Reeves was going through a tough patch prior to the 2014 release of John Wick. Despite his fame, he had slowed down on his output. After the failure of a few of his recent Hollywood ventures, he found himself with fewer opportunities. He appeared to be nearing the end of his run as the lead. Everything, though, changed after a certain film. As action films go, John Wick was more than that. The protagonist was a man with absolutely nothing to lose. Following the theft of his vehicle and the murder of his dog, a present from his late wife, former hitman Reeves went on a murderous rampage. The straightforward narrative had an air of mystery about it. The action was intense, and the world they created was unlike anything that had been witnessed before. The film was not an easy production. No one had ever directed a film before except Chad Stahelski and David Lake. Despite studio doubts about Reeves's ability to carry an action film, Lionsgate acquired the rights 2 months prior to the film's release. Commercials played a significant role in turning the film into a phenomenon. The trailers made it clear that this was going to be anything but a dull action flick. It had impeccable craftsmanship, a sleek design, and cast Keanu Reeves in a role that brought out his best. It premiered on October 13, 2014 in New York. Andy, the puppy who portrayed Reeves's dog in the film, accompanied him on the red carpet. A week later, John Wick was released in theaters across the United States. Nobody was expecting much. In its first weekend, experts predicted it would earn $7, $10 million. The actual revenue was $14. $4 million, only IMAX films generated $2, 500,000 of those. For an R-rated action film with a limited budget, it was a significant victory, though not a huge one. Several critics gave it high marks. They praised Keanu Reeves' performance, the film's clean action sequences, and the world building. It wasn't simply losers, though. Nobody saw the film's potential for such strong emotional resonance. The coded and regulated secret world of Assassin's Guild set it apart from all previous theatrical releases. John Wick's quiet resolve, portrayed by Reeves, is what really sets the character apart. Thanks to the film's success, Reeves got another shot at the Hollywood dream. But it wasn't merely the film, it was also his behind-the-scenes contributions. He put in months of training before filming began. Aside from learning martial arts and shooting, he also mastered trick cards. His battle scenes seemed authentic because he was physically rehearsing them. By the time filming began, he had mastered stunts that even experienced performers had trouble mastering. John Wick increased his training for Chapter 4 by going the extra mile. During his 12 weeks of training, he mastered complex gun maneuvers and racing techniques, such as high-speed slides and 180-degree spins. Over 90% of the stunt work in all 4 films was done by him. The series was unique among action flicks because of his tireless efforts. John Wick, Chapter 3, cast member Halle Berry put in the same amount of time at the gym as the rest of the cast. Despite injuring her 3 ribs during rehearsal, she persisted in performing her. The fight scenes involving her were among the most memorable portions of the show because they demonstrated that the actors weren't merely acting. The production budget for the first John Wick film was between $20 and $30 million, but it grossed $86 million worldwide. The second film grossed $171 million, which is over double the first. The third chapter of John Wick earned $326 million upon its release. Chapter 4 of John Wick, though, was what shocked everyone. With over $440 million in earnings, it ranks among the all-time great action series. Keanu Reeves has been one of the hardest-working actors of all time. As he approaches 60 years of age, his body is finally starting to rebel against all the hard work he put into bringing his roles to life in films like The Matrix and John Wick. Surprising his fans, he made an unexpected statement in a recent interview. Even though his knees aren't cooperating, he is still determined to play John Wick. He pointed out, "Never say never. My knees tell me I can't do another John Wick movie, but my heart wants me to. I just don't know if my knees can handle it." Even someone as committed as Reeves can only do so many intense fight scenes and bloody action scenes in a row. This makes me wonder a lot about what will happen with John Wick 5. With its stunning routines and never-ending energy, the series changed the way action movies are made. But what happens if Reeves can't handle the same level of punishment? Would the show make sense without him, or could it slow down? He hasn't said no to anything, but it's clear that he's not sure what to do. Reeves isn't leaving the world of John Wick just yet, even though there may not be a 5th movie. He has already done an appearance in Ballerina, a spin-off movie with Ana de Armas. The movie won't come out until 2025, so Reeves will always be connected to the world he helped make. What John Wick fans are behind Keanu Reeves' icy exterior lies a man who has been wounded by love many times. In 1993, he lost his best friend River Phoenix to a drug overdose. It was a dark moment in his life. The two had become close while filming My Own Private Idaho in 1991, which served as more than just a showcase for their musical abilities. It brought them closer together. Tragically, River died at the young age of 23 at the club The Viper Room in West Hollywood. That night, he was supposed to perform with the band P, which featured Flea and John Frusciante of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. However, River had been under the influence of dangerous amounts of drugs throughout the night, ruining what should have been a fun and musical performance. He had not slept in days due to the heroin and cocaine he had mixed. He began to feel nauseous at some point. His symptoms worsened throughout the night. As he left the club, he passed out on the sidewalk, his body trembling. His brother Joaquin dialed 911, But by the time assistance arrived, it was too late. Paramedics transported him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but unfortunately they were unable to save him. His death was announced at 1:51 a.m., October 31, 1993. Keanu was inconsolable. Rivers' death was more than a friend's. It was the loss of someone who felt like family. He rarely spoke about it, but whenever he did, it was always with a heavy heart. 5 years later, Keanu met Jennifer Syme, who was David Lynch's assistant. They fell in love instantly. In 1999, they learned they were expecting a baby. Despite all expectations, that period of Keanu's life was filled with sadness. Their daughter, Ava Archer Syme Reeves, passed away just before Christmas that year. They were devastated by the loss. Their relationship began to crumble as the sadness became too much to bear. Eventually, they broke up, but they remained very much in love. Then, tragedy struck again. On April 2, 2001 in Los Angeles, Jennifer hurt herself when she careened into a row of parked cars. She wasn't wearing her safety belt, so she was thrown out of the car and died instantly. She was only 28 years old. After a wild night at Marilyn Manson's house, she mysteriously vanished the next morning. The police eventually found prescription drugs in her car, adding insult to injury. Keanu had already lost so much, and now he had to say goodbye to the woman he had hoped to start a family with. At her funeral, standing as a pallbearer, his face betrayed his sadness. Dave Navarro, a musician, and David Lynch, a director, were also there, and they sang a duet called Tomorrow. Lynch dedicated his film Mulholland Drive to Jennifer as a tribute to her memory. It was to Jennifer that Keanu had learned to endure all that pain. In 1991, Keanu's sister Kim Reeves was diagnosed with leukemia. She fought the illness for nearly 10 years, and Keanu was always by her side. He put his job on hold to take care of her. It was him who moved in with her, took care of her, and made sure she had everything she needed. This strengthened his resolve to hold on to the people he loved. In a 2009 interview, he briefly mentioned his foundation, saying, "I have a private foundation that's been running for 5 or 6 years, and it helps a couple of children's hospitals and cancer research." He doesn't talk much about it, but the reason is very personal. His sister Kim was diagnosed with leukemia in 1991. She fought the illness for 10 years before it went away in 2001. Seeing her go through that changed him. He now wants to help other people going through the same thing. It bothers me when my name is associated with it. To put it simply, he is just someone who lets the foundation carry out its mission. In 2008, he answered the phones during the Stand Up to Cancer telethon to help raise money for studies. He has also helped raise money for other causes over the years, but he has never made a big deal out of it. What he did speaks for itself, but he isn't just known for big gifts. He shows his true self through the small, quiet acts of kindness. In 1997, paparazzi caught him eating snacks with a homeless man while sitting on the ground in West Hollywood. That's not even close to how generous he is. He went above and beyond by not only feeding him, but also sitting with him, watching, laughing, and conversing with him. This wasn't for the cameras, it was always him. On another occasion, he assisted a woman whose car had overheated on the side of the road. After trying to jumpstart it, he contacted a tow truck. This act alone would have been sufficient, but he didn't end there. He offered to drive her home nearly 50 miles away, while they conversed, and he gave her his number in case she needed it. In the midst of a bustling metropolis, he remains true to himself. An unidentified person has seen him riding the train multiple times, but not in his celebrity status. He has willingly offered his seat to older passengers and pregnant women. He doesn't consider himself special. What sets him apart is his humility. His generosity extends to his colleagues as well. During the Matrix sequels, he allegedly withdrew a large sum of money, approximately $75 million, so that the costume and special effects teams could receive higher salaries. He wanted to show his appreciation for their hard work. Not only that, but after The Matrix became a huge hit, he gifted nearly $1 million to each member of the visual effects and post-production team out of his own pocket. People in this group rarely saw bonuses regardless of the success of a film, but they did so because of Reeves. In other films, he has also taken pay cuts to hire important actors or crew members. There are many stories about what Keanu Reeves does for other people, but he rarely talks about them. Despite the fact that fame often causes people to change, he continues to act in a completely selfless manner, doing what he loves rather than what others expect of him.